Agreed.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, this is Sabina Moeddin with the American Muslim Advisory Council. And so before the coronavirus hit, we have been working on the 2020 census. And this is a very important form that we all need to be completing for a variety of reasons. And so this is what the webinar is about, to answer questions people have on the census, and also understand why do you need to take the trouble to fill it out. So I'm going to share my screen. And can you all see it fine?
Yeah.
Okay. So the 2020 census, our numbers matter. So, you know, this is our campaign to really try to get, to understand how many Muslims live across Tennessee, but across the country. And to say that we count, you know, our numbers matter. Let's see. So what is the 2020 census? So every 10 years, the U.S. Census Bureau works to count every single person in the U.S. So it doesn't matter the age, it can be young, a newborn baby, or no matter how old they are. It doesn't matter what their immigration status is, you know, whether they have a green card or not, or they're just here to study for a couple of years. If you're living here, you count in the census, and it's a comprehensive population count in the United States, and it's actually written into our Constitution. And so 1790 was when the first census was taking place in the US. So every 10 years since 1790, they've been doing a population count. And so this is just a continuation of that. And so with the coronavirus, some of the timeline for the census has changed. So what we know so far, you know, before everything hit, the census was already working to get letters out to every household in the United States, inviting people to take the census. And so you may have already received a letter in the mail. And so there's this letter, and I hope you can see it. I'm holding it up. There was a letter in the mail that was sent out to everybody last week, inviting them to actually take the census. And so March 12th was the first day you could actually, take the census, but they were going to end self-response by May, but they pushed it back to July 31st. So from now until July 31st, you can take the census. And then April 1st is actually the official census day. And the reason why, you know, April 1st is the official census day, but you can still take it beforehand, it's that the questionnaire actually asks you how many people are living in your house on April 1st. So they kind of had to pick one day in which you have to think about how many people are living in your house. And so that could be, so if you're taking it early, you're thinking on April 1st. If you're filling out the form in late April or May, you think about back to April 1st. But you'll keep getting these letters in the mail, and they'll send you about 4 of them. And just every week they're going to send you something reminding you to take the census. And but they want you to fill it out online. They want you to fill it out online, or they want you to pick up the phone and respond by phone. If by late April you do not respond, they will mail you a paper form. And then from June to August, if you have not responded, they will literally send a census taker to your house who will knock on your door and ask you for those answers to the questionnaire. So, so that's kind of the timeline, and I'll repeat this and go more specifically into these dates. So, so in Davidson County, which is in Nashville, Muslims, our Muslim community live in a lot of the areas that have been, have had low response rates in the past. And low response rates mean that they get an invitation to fill out the census and they don't fill it out on their own. And finally, the census people have to go and knock on doors and try to get that information. But usually by the time somebody's knocking at your door trying to get the information, it's still not, you know, you're still missing a lot of people. And so if you look at this map of Davidson County, those areas in red, like that's near Murfreesboro Road, and then, you know, the orange and reds in the southeast corner of Davidson County are, these are like around Nolensville Road, in the Antioch area, where we know there are high concentration of Muslim population. And so we're not being completely counted. We don't really have a full understanding of, in the past, we haven't had a full understanding of how many Muslims actually live in these areas. And then you see parts of North Nashville that have not responded well to the census. And again, you know, a lot of times these areas are the same areas that are marginalized in our community. They are under-resourced. And I could not find the census map for 2010 for Memphis, because they've actually taken it down in the beginning of March. But it's the same in the inner city in Memphis. There, you know, you're going to see a lot of this red and orange where people have not in the past responded to the census. And so these are the areas of greatest concern that we're focusing our work to make sure our community members respond and are counted, because this is about resource, this is about money, this is about political representation. It matters for our community. So why is it that our community members do not respond to the census like they should? So first of all, they don't know about the census. You know, you can talk to friends and neighbors and mention census, and they may have seen a commercial. They really don't understand what it is. And especially when you talk about new immigrants coming in, they weren't here in 2010. So they have no past experience of what the census is. And so they just don't know about it. And then secondly, they don't understand the importance of the data. Like, why does the government need to know how many people live in my house? Then there are language barriers. The census, you know, you can take the census in 13 different languages, but still, you know, a lot of what you see, the commercials and the flyers, are in English. And so there's still a language barrier there. There's a distrust in government, and we know in the Muslim community, you know, we have real reason to have a distrust in the government. And so the question is, will the data be used to target me or my communities? And we know how ICE has been targeting certain communities. We know about police surveillance, especially in the Muslim community. And so there's a fear if they know there are this concentration of Muslim in this neighborhood, will we be targeted? But, you know, rest assured that the data they're using is not from the census. They have their own data. People have might have problems with immigration. But, you know, rest assured, even though the president tried to put immigration citizenship question on the census, the Supreme Court knocked that out. And so there is no citizenship question on the census. And that's important, because a lot of people are scared to fill it out because they think the government will know their status. but there's no question. In our community, we have large families. And so sometimes we're living in apartments and we have gone over the limit of the number of people who can live in an apartment. And so people are scared to actually put down everyone's name that lives in their home on the census. But this information, again, it's not going to be shared with anybody. The landlords will never know who or how many people are living in an apartment. Also, we have community members who have housing instability. So maybe they're between jobs, or they're moving from city to city and looking for a job. And so a lot of times these people kind of fall through the cracks. And so the census really tries to make sure that anyone living in a household on April 1st is counted, even though they might not be living there for long. So they try to do their best to make sure we're counted, but reaching out to these community members who are moving a lot and saying, you need to be counted somewhere. That's part of the work we're trying to do. So again, the fear is, how would the government use our census data? So by law, census workers cannot share personal information on the census. And so there's actually a fine of $250,000, 5 years in jail, something like that, for any census worker who even attempts to share any information. So this data is safe. Your name and your address, and these will all be confidential, because the information would be used only to produce statistics. So it's really the number of people living in a house that matters. It's not the name or the exact person who's living there. So it's, the data is separated from that personal information. And the information, again, I said it before, it cannot be used by ICE or FBI, DHS, or CIA, or any other law enforcement agency, or any government or private agency. They cannot use that personal data that's collected on the census. But really, personal data is just mainly your name and your address and the phone number. So there is no Social Security question on the census. They will not ask you for a credit card. They will not ask you for passwords. And the reason why I say that is there's a lot of fraud going on. There are people literally are getting mailers that say, oh, this is a census, please fill it out. And in California, we found out that one of the political parties were sending these out, and it was more of a survey for their party, and but it had the word census, and so it confused people in terms of they thought, well, I already filled out the census, but it was not the official 2020 census. There are people committing fraud, knocking on people's door, trying to say they're a census taker, I need your information. Just know that nobody will come knocking at anyone's door until June, and that's only if you didn't fill out the census. And they would have an official census, U.S. Census Bureau badge. And still, again, there are no questions on Social Security, no questions about your credit card or password or mother's maiden name. So, the questions are very simple and clear. And so, if you have any doubts, don't, stay away from it. So why does the census matter? And this is the most important. And this is why we want our communities counted. Because first and foremost, this is about $700 billion of federal money that is distributed to the states. This is federal money. This is money that we are paying taxes for, that goes to the federal government, that we want back in our communities. So in Tennessee, we risk losing $2,600 per person per year for 10 years for every person not counted in the census. So this is a high stakes number game, right? This is $26,000 over 10 years that our communities will lose for each person not counted. And it's not just the person who's not counted losing, it's all of us too. And so that's why as a community, we want to make sure our community members are filling out the census. So district maps. So, you know, census is also about political representation. And so your district that you live in, the congressional district, or your state house or state senate districts are the, you know, those district lines are drawn using data from the census. And so every 10 years, these district lines are redrawn. So 2010, they're going to take the census data. 2020, they're taking the census data. 2021, they will redraw these district maps and according to the population. And so in Nashville, we know there's a possibility of adding a state house district. So adding a new district because that population has grown. And I would think that would probably be similar in Memphis. I'm not sure, but so it really matters. If we have the numbers, we've shown the growth, we can, you know, we can possibly have a new state house member. So that means more representation. That means more power. That means we have a stronger voice in our political system. So it's very important for our communities. State and local governments use the data from the census to determine whether or not to expand services, like whether you need a new school in an area, you need health clinics, fire stations, libraries, hospitals, road improvements. You know, you figure out how many people are living, how much use is there for those roads and highways, and money is distributed in that way. So it's very important. Businesses and nonprofits also use that census data to figure out where would they want to make an investment, where would they want to build a new factory or expand their company or expand their stores. And that would mean more jobs in our communities and economic growth. And so data is also used to do research about different groups of people. We can have a better understanding of our ethnic communities. So like in Nashville, we have the largest Kurdish community in the US, but exactly how big is it? We don't know. It would be great to have those numbers of all our different communities, because when we talk to our political leaders, it matters. Because if they think, well, you know, you're just a small community, they won't listen to you much. But when you can say, hey, we're this many people, we live in your district, what are you doing to address our needs? Those numbers matter. And also our history. And so the census data is protected over our lifetime, but in, let's say, you know, 2 generations from now, somebody is doing, say, an ancestry.com research into, you know, when did my great-grandparents come and settle in the US, and where were they living and what was it like? That's, you know, that's how they get all their information. So on ancestry.com, people have lived here for over 100 years. They can go back and see where their families came from census data. So a little bit more about schools, because I think in our communities, we're all concerned about schools. And so schools are funded by federal, state, and local government. And it's really, you know, it's distributed by the number of school-age kids there are in a community. And so when you have more federal money to finance programs, then you're saving, you're freeing up state and local money for other school programs. And federal funds, like $16 billion of federal funds, go for Title I grants that help low-income families and community. $12 billion goes for special education grants, school lunch programs, Head Start, grants for improving teacher quality. So really being properly counted means that our schools can get be better funded. Cities decide where to build new schools based on census. So really, we all worry about our school systems, whether our kids are being have a quality education, and so really getting counted so we can get the funding to improve our educational system is critical in our community. So what are the census questions? So I have on my computer a sample form. So first of all is how many people living in the house on April 1st? So it's going to count everyone who's living in your house on April 1st. It'll also ask you what kind of residence do you have, is it a house, apartment, whether or not you own it. It'll ask the phone number of the person who's filling it out. So a census form goes to each household, and only one person in the house actually fills it out, and that person fills it out for the whole family. And so only that person puts a phone number down, and that phone number is not so they can later try to sell you things and or use it for marketing purposes, but it's just that if you missed information on the census form, they can call you and verify that information. So it's just kind of a quality control, and that's why they ask for the phone number. And then for each person living in the home, it'll ask the name, their sex, their age and birth date, and the relationship that person has to the person who's actually filling out the form. And then they'll ask whether it's Hispanic or non-Hispanic and their race. And so, so here I have a sample. This is a copy of the paper form that you fill out. And so you can see, it'll ask you, like you see here at number 8, it'll ask you if a person is Hispanic or non-Hispanic. And then on question 9, and this is the most interesting question. So what's the person's race? And so this year we're able to get very specific in terms of the race. So you can of course put white, black, American Indian, and then you have all these different categories: Chinese, Vietnamese, Asian Indian, and then it has other Asian, where you can be more specific, Pakistani, Cambodian, and then some other race. So we have such a diverse community, right? So with the white, in the past, Arabs and actually the MENA community, Middle East and North African community, which is mostly Arabs, have tried to get like a separate category on the census for that community, but they didn't get it this year. But you can, if in the past Arabs were considered white. If you consider yourself white, you can mark white and then actually put underneath that you are Palestinian or you're Syrian, Egyptian, and answer it like that. For Kurdish, if you consider yourself white, you can mark white and put Kurdish or be more specific. Black or African American. So if you're African American and you've been here generations, you can mark that and not put anything more specific if you don't know. If you're an African immigrant, you can put black and then put, say, Nigerian or Somali. And then, there's American Indian and again, Asian Indian, and then other Asian, like for myself, I could put other Asian and put Bangladeshi. If you're mixed, you can mark more than one. If you have a mixed background, you can mark more than one and put those in. There's the category, some other race. If you say you're Arab and you don't want to put white, you don't consider yourself white, you could always put some other race and be specific on your ethnicity. So there's not a right or wrong answer, but it just kind of helps us understand what are the communities living in Tennessee, in the United States. So, so another question that will be on the census is, does this person usually live or stay somewhere else? And so right now, I know there are a lot of questions on how do you answer this question? How do you, fill out the census if you have college students who on April 1st, they would have been in college. It would be their spring semester, they're living on campus, they're on, let's say they live in the dorm. But because of the coronavirus, they're at home now. They were supposed to be at school, but they were told to go home, and now they're at home. And so how do you do this? Like, where do they count? Because the way the census works is people who are living in dorms, they are counted under group quarters. That means their dormitory, their college would have counted them in the census, and they didn't have to fill out one specifically for themselves. But now that they moved back home because of the coronavirus, their parents can add them to the name on their census form. But they will actually be saying that, does this person usually stay or live somewhere else? You can say yes, for college. Usually they're in college. Right now they're home, but usually they're in college. The dorms will still, even though they've moved out, will still count them in their dormitory group quarter count. So they're going to be counted twice, but the census has a way to verify the information, so they will only count them at one location in the final count. But I filled out the census this morning for myself online, and how it works is you put everyone's name in separately, and then the last question is, does any of these people live most of the time anywhere else? And then if you say yes, I'll ask you for that address of where they usually live. So if they're off in college and they have another address there. And so with that information, they kind of verify, and it will be flagged that they're being, they have two addresses, and only one will count for the final count. So I know that was confusing with a lot of college students going home. Another question that we get is, parents are, they are visiting me from overseas, parents, grandparents, for a while. If they're living with you on April 1st, even though they usually live back home somewhere overseas, but they've been visiting you for a while and they're here, then they count. If you have aunt or uncle, or you have a cousin, or you're taking care of a niece or a nephew and they're living in your house, they count. And so if you think of any other scenarios you want to ask me about, I'll do my best to answer that. Yeah, are there any questions? I know I just keep talking, but any other potential confusion over who counts in the house? Like if you have a newborn baby, April 1st, that baby counts. If you have parents who are actually living in a, say, nursing home because of health issues, then they're going to be count in group quarters for nursing home. So they have different ways to make sure everyone is counted properly. So what language does the census use? So the paper form, which they won't send you until end of April, and that's only if you didn't fill out the census online or by phone, will only be in English and Spanish. Online, there are 13 different languages. I'm going to go in a second and show you the languages there. But if you don't speak those 13 different languages, there are 59 language guides. So the census website can be translated to these 59 languages right here. and it has guides on how to answer the questions, more explanation about the questions. And if you do the census on phone, they actually have a phone number you can call. They can do it in 13 different languages. So I was just going to, for a second, go to okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the AMAC website, and we have all the information that's in the presentation here. There's a link to fill out the census, and so this is the official census website. So if you respond now, you can see where you can fill out the census, and on the bottom are these 13 different languages that you can choose. This, the online form is very simple, straightforward, easy to do. In 10 minutes, you'll be done. And then you go back. So if you don't speak one of the 13 language and you need one of the other languages, the whole website can be translated to these 59 different languages. So you can literally pick a language and the whole website is translated. And then they have a language guide on how to answer. Unfortunately, they do not have Kurdish languages in here, but they do have Arabic, and you can fill it out in Arabic. So I just wanted to show you that, and then go back to the slide. So again, you can answer the census online, by phone, or by mail. Every household will have a special code. So actually the letter you get in the mail has a code on it. And it has a code, and when you fill out the census, you put this code in, and this code is connected to the address you live in. If you lose this letter from the census, you don't need the code to fill out the census. You can fill out the census using your address. So it's nice to have the code, but if you've lost the letter, you threw it away by accident, or it's at home and you're somewhere else and you want to fill it out, you just put your address in. So they make it as simple as possible. Again, if you do not fill out the census on your own by the end of July, you have until July to fill it out online or by phone, but by the end of May, if you have not filled it out, they're going to send somebody to your door knocking and trying to get that information. And so that is why you want to fill it out yourself. None of us really care to have anyone knocking on the door. And this really is dependent on what the current, situation is with the COVID-19, whether it's safe for those census workers to actually go door to door by then. If it is, they will be coming out if you haven't filled it out. If it's not, they'll probably push the dates out further. But it's just important that you fill it out. So our numbers matter. When we are counted, we build power in our communities. And so it's civic power that we build. The census is about money for our communities, it's about resources for our communities, it's about political representation. And so, unfortunately, we know a lot of our communities are marginalized. We don't have the things that we need. And this is a way of ensuring that our community can thrive and grow. And I would pair this up with voting, but really this is a means in which you don't have to be a citizen. You know, everyone has to fill out the census. This is a way for everyone to be civically engaged. And, you know, I encourage everyone to go to our website to look for more information, and you can always contact me, Sabina Moidin at pr@amactn.com, and there's a contact form on our website to have more questions answered, or anything you need to know about the census. I would encourage everyone to tell your friends to fill out the census. People are at home, you know, it's time to take a break from the news and do something that gives you hope for our community, gives you some power at this moment, and that is to fill out the census. So please pass along this information, tell your friends, and encourage everyone to take it. So I would love to answer any questions that you may have.
So it's pretty easy actually. I received 2 letters and I already finished it, and I posted on Facebook this morning, and I'm gonna continue posting and let the community know and try to help, you know, make them aware of it.
Yeah, you know, so on the census website, you can actually look at the response rates so they've divided the entire country, every state, every city, every county, like into census tracts. And so small areas where they actually track what the response rate is. And I was looking at Davidson County last night, and there's literally one tract around the Murfreesboro Road area, that had a 0 response rate. and so, you know, and these are areas that our community members live. And so we still, and because of the coronavirus, you know, we've been kind of derailed in terms of getting the word out, but it's so important to really reach out to those community members, because again, they're not thinking about it. This doesn't feel like a high priority. You're worried about your finance. You're worried about feeding your family at this moment. And so where's the connection? And so kind of connecting the dots for them, that this is about money and resources for our community. It's about not being marginalized anymore, but really like doing something for ourselves, making sure we're counted, and going out there and making sure our communities have the resources they deserve. So thank you, you know, for sharing that. And I think, you know, everyone who fills it out, we shared like a short, you know, social media post that I've done it. Now, have you done it? You know, it's really, we have more sway with our personal contacts with our friends. So passing that information along.
Inshallah, I will do that. We will continue to do that. I'll continue to do that.
Any other questions?
No, I just want to thank you. You were very thorough. That was really, really good. So
Thank you so much. I took a lot of notes.
yeah, that was great. Thank you.
No, thank you. And we will have another one, another webinar this Saturday at 1 o'clock, and then next Tuesday at 6 p.m. So encourage more people to hop on the webinar, and we'll try to share this one online and through social media. Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, we'll end it there.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. Bye bye.